In this series of videos, I will go through the Seneferu's pipeline very quickly as an overview to show the concept of Seneferu's procedural pipeline. First of all, I will log into my account in Tactic because this is a Seneferu project engine. Then you will see Seneferu project interface. Then you saw before that we have already created and published some scenes and shots for some rough footage that I've taken for this test, and I created some assets here. I created a railway asset which has two assets inside it, which is the rails and the pebbles, and I created a train asset which is a rig type of assets because it will have a rig and animation on per shot basis. And this is assembly because it's having other shots assembled inside it. As you just saw, it has two other assets, and these are just normal assets. You can see where these assets are used, in which scene or in which shot by going through these tabs, or you can see in which asset this asset is member. Okay, that's enough for now. I will go to the scenes and shot planner. I want to plan this to here and here. I don't need to select it actually. You can select multiple and drag them all together. And as you can see, I assigned or I planned the scene or the set to the scene level itself, because this will be in all the shots, but the train will not be in all the shots, so I will assign it only in the shots where it has to be. The train actually is going to be in the road, because what we are going to do is that we will remove the road and we will put the rails, we will put the railway instead of the road, and we will add some CG assets on this environment. We will add some trees, some vehicles or whatever. I will add some testing assets. I will make 3D tracking for the shots, and I will add some assets. Of course, this is not a production, so you don't expect that we are going to create everything in the video tutorial. It's just to show you how Seneferu is handling the task types and the processes types, and how he handled the different situations, the simulation, the animation, and the mix between CG and live, which is the VFX works, and how he's going to handle and deal with the lens distortions and so on. Just so that's enough for now. Let's add it to some shots here. Actually, I'm not going to use all these shots, but I will, when we edit the shots, only the shots that we are using is going to be there. The others will be either retired or deleted, depending on what you decide. and the shot information will be set based on the edit. As you see now, if you go to these scenes, you will notice that the shots doesn't have frame range information because we didn't make any edit of these shots too, or they are not member in any edits. Accordingly, Seneferu doesn't know the frame range to be used from these shots. So when we do the editing for these shots, we will Seneferu will set the in and out points on each shot, which will reflect in everything during the pipeline, as you are going to see. Let's create some more assets. Let's for example say that in this not this, let me create another assembly. Let's call it environment this time, and let's make it assembly, and we will make this mountain what I'm going to do now is that I want sorry, let's go to the assets assembler. I want this to be the whole environment, so I want this railway to be member of this big set. And in the scenes and shot planner, I will remove this from here, and I will put this instead. What I just did is just to show you how you can plan things inside things, and how to put an assembled assets inside bigger assembled asset. In this mountains view asset, I'm going to create additional assets for mountains and matte painting and stuff like that, just to show you how to deal with all this kind of situations and requirements. So I will go now to this, and let's add inside it some more assets like mountains. Make the asset type environment, and let's go for the scenes, and let's create here matte paint task, and let's say that we are going also to create crowd simulation for the whole scene, which will be might some people around the rails doing anything. Let's make crowd sim, and let's make effects for the whole scene. I'm creating these tasks in the scene level because I want these to be members in all the shots for this scene. Accordingly, I will make a matte painting in a spherical environment, where then when we do the 3D tracking later, then the cameras will see the matte painting from wherever it is according to the camera angle. And for the crowd simulation, I will also simulate some crowd simulation, a long duration of crowd simulation, so we can use the same simulation for each shot. I'm showing you this to see how can you or when do you have to use the scene level tasks and jobs, and when do you need to use the shot levels. In this case, I'm using scene level tasks, then they will be members in all the children shots of this scene. And if I go to the shots themselves, You can create additional tasks here on the shot, like for example effects or fluid simulation or whatever. Then this is going to be for this exact shot or for this particular shot, and it will not be there for the other shots. When I say it will be there for the other shots, I mean that after the simulation or after finishing the task, you will find these simulations or whatever the task is, you will find them as dependencies in the lighting task. So when you do the lighting, you will find that these the lighting for any of these shots, you will find that all the scene level simulations are coming automatically in your lighting recipe. But if this is or if this simulation or this particular object or whatever you have planned is you have planned it to the shot, or you created the simulation task or animation or whatever on the shot level, then this is going to be or will come automatically only for the lighting of this shot, not the whole thing. Of course, I don't mean only the lighting, but it's anything that is going to require these objects. For example, the animation. If you work on animation SH task in a particular shot, everything was planned in the scene. You will see it in your scene when you are doing the animation. Seneferu will load all the scene level environment, so you can see where are you animating your characters and objects, or where you are making your effects and so on, as you are going to see on how Seneferu is dealing with the dependencies of each job. All what you need to know now is that how to create the tasks in the proper place. If this is going to be used for all the shots, then create the task in the scene level. If this is going to be used for only for one particular shot or some shots, then create the tasks in the shots themselves. So for example, if this affects SCN, I'm planning to make some sort of maybe fog or any volumetric effects that will be visible in all shots. But when you want this task or this job to be just for a particular shot, you can, for example, create maybe something like crowd simulation for this shot. In this case, what is going to happen is that Seneferu will find that there is a crowd simulation in the scene level and there is a crowd simulation in the shot level here. Then what is going to happen that when you load dependencies for the crowd simulation of for the crowd simulation task of this shot, Seneferu will load the crowd simulation setup that you did for the scene itself, so you can refine it to work with this shot and publish it rather than making it from scratch. So this is always the concept. It's not related to just one thing, but anything that is scene level and shot level is being treated the same thing. For example, the lighting. If you have a lighting here, for example, let's say that you have Katana template SCN. If you have a Katana template scene in the scene level, what is going to happen is that when you do the lighting, assuming that you are going to do the lighting in Katana, for example, when you do the lighting of this shot, what's going to happen is that Seneferu will automatically load the Katana template that you published on the scene level and will inject all the assets and caches for this shot automatically to this Katana template, and will build for you a scene ready for lighting that has every thing there. As I said, this is the concept of how Seneferu works. So this applies on composite, applies on everything. You can make a comp for the whole scene. Then, as you are going to see later, that this comp will inherit all the composite of all the shots, where you can have all the shots finished by just making a composite for the scene level. Then you can just do refinements on per shot basis whenever it's needed. The same like this example that I just explained regarding to the Katana template, for example. If you don't know what is Katana template is just a recipe where you have all the nodes are prepared. So I think you will have to see this first, because it's just think about it as a project template in Katana, where you can have all the things, the render settings, and all the script and plugins to resolve the shaders and textures and render time are already there, and a lot of other things, as you are going to see later. But in regards to this kind of hierarchical or procedural pipeline, there is also something called shared assets. And the shared assets here, what you are going to do is that you create a global project templates and stuff that you can, or that the user can load it as dependency for their task whenever this is needed. For example, if you look at the tasks here, you will see, for example, the brain parts is brain parts for massive crowd agents. For example, you will see studio library. This is the animation studio library for the whole show. You can create a shader library. This will be the shader library for the whole project. This is something I'm going to create now. This is like live group generic, which is a Katana live group actually for team collaboration. As you may see later, for example, this is something I will also create. This is a Katana template generic, which will be loaded in all the shots. Actually, Seneferu ships with a shader library and a Katana template, where this Katana template supports instances and all the advanced things that you might not be able to make in Katana if you don't have enough pipeline TDs to do that for you. Seneferu actually has a great support for Katana and Maya as well, actually, when it comes to lighting and rendering and shader resolve and texture resolve and render time, and utilizing the concept of shader library instead of having shader assigned for each object and stuff like that. You will see this in more details later, so just for now let's create the tasks. And I will not create comp, I want test environment, I want turntable. And by the way, if you are, of course this is just a rough test, but in real production you might be having a storyboard edit where you are going to edit all your storyboard entries using this task. In this task, what it's going to do is that according to the edit of the storyboard, the system will automatically create all the scenes and shot entries in the database the way that you are going to fill them later. When you go, for example, for shooting, you will come with the material and ingest them using Seneferu ingest, where each one of the takes will go to the proper shot entry in the database, as you may have seen in the Seneferu ingest. The turntable is just a setup to test the assets. Testing environment is an environment to test your assets to, while this is the camera, this is the environment itself where you want to test your assets. And as I said, this is a generic Katana template which will be loaded automatically for all shots. When you start lighting, this will be a dependency for all the lighting task. If the shot lighting task found a Katana recipe for the shot itself, Seneferu will load the Katana recipe from the shot context. If he didn't find in the shot, he will load the Katana template recipe from the scene level. If he didn't find in the scene level, he will load the generic template as dependency for the lighting. So this is the concept that everything in Seneferu or how everything in Seneferu works. This is how Seneferu thinks about the correlations between the processes. So you will always see things like that. You will see a task here called generic in the shared asset. In the scene level, it will be called Katana template SCN rather than generic. In the shot, it will be called Katana template SH for the shot, or maybe it will be just Katana template, assuming that if it doesn't have, then it's for the shot. Also, we will create light rig generic. This is also will be dependencies for a lot of things. When you are doing lighting or testing or look dev, you will have this light generic rig there. Also notice that you can create multiple instances of each task. So in that case, sorry, I created the wrong thing. I didn't want live group. I wanted to create light. I will delete this. And I will create, actually it's not recommended to, it's recommended to create the tasks from this one, not the other. Again, I want light rig. So you have now two light rig. I want to call this, for example, day. Maybe we want to call this evening. And let's create another one. I don't want to create it from here. Let me create it from here. Let's call this, for example, 3 points. This is, let's say that this 3 points light setup. And let's say, for example, by the way, I will publish these things from what comes with Seneferu. If you have, you can publish it. If you want to use the assets that ships with Seneferu, you can just use them. Especially for the shader library, it's recommended to use this shader library and modify it for your own uses later. Now let's go to the assets again, and let's go to the mountains view. Let me create here some more assets, like for example African tree. And let's create another tree. Maybe we will make some foliage and trees later. That's enough for now until I decide what else I'm going to add, because this is a quick test. So of course I'm not going to create all these things, at least not as a production quality. Maybe some of them will be just rough objects or low quality assets, just for showing you how the pipeline and workflow in Seneferu works, and how Seneferu brain thinks and resolve and correlate things to each other. In the post-production here, I created a task called edit and color grading. This is for the, you can check also what are the available tasks here. Rather than this, you have delivery and you have subtitles and you have soundtrack. Actually, the soundtrack in the post-production is the overall soundtrack of your show or movie or whatever the project is. This in case if you want to publish some such kind of soundtrack. But you will notice that, for example, if you go to the scenes, you will have soundtrack for the scene itself, that you can create this task to publish for it the soundtrack for this particular scene, which will be the soundtrack for all the shots belonging to this scene. And you can, in the shot level, the same concept again, this, you can create a soundtrack for the shot itself. In that case, this will be the soundtrack for this shot. And as I mentioned before, when you are working on the soundtrack of this shot, Seneferu will automatically load for you the soundtrack for the whole project and the soundtrack for the if he found a soundtrack on the scene level, he will bring the soundtrack of the scene level, and if he didn't find, he will bring the soundtrack of the whole project. So you can again refine it or remix it or do whatever you want for the particular shot. Or maybe you are not going to refine it, but maybe you want to use this soundtrack SH to be like sound effects for particular shot, for a specific action, or whatever the reasons is, whatever the reasons are. So if you want to see an example here, what you are going to do is, after creating the soundtrack, you can keep it as it is if you don't have any other soundtrack for the shots, or you can again edit that and call it, for example, SFX or explosion, for example. I will not do this kind of things now, because this is, as I said, it's just a rough project that is not planned. I want to delete the crowd simulation task that I created for this shot before I forget, because we are not going to do that. We are going to make a global simulation for the whole scene. What I'm going to do also is that I will publish in the assets, I will publish all the shaders assets here, because these are and I will also publish, as I said before, the shader library, and I will publish these from the assets that ships with Seneferu.